4 o'clock, according to all the watches under my command. Let's begin. Welcome, everybody, to one of our free webinars. And let me begin with what is very important in AI, expectation management. So you will get a webinar which is very top level, explaining to you how to integrate metadata into your bot and a bot into your website. It is specifically meant for people who are not tech orientated, but who, like me, by the way, but who want to understand how it all works. Knowing my own ignorance in technical matters or in very technical matters, though our lead developer is present in the chat. So if you have technical questions about formats, about protocols, about APIs, about how to, I invite you to just write it in the chat and he will answer. Of course, you can also write an email after the end of the webinar. And by the way, at the end of the webinar, a very brief questionnaire of 3 questions will open. And you're invited to put any there here in that you will think of, or the questions you might have also in this questionnaire at the end of the webinar. So these are the ways to ask us if something is not dealt with in depth. Second thing is, in contrast to all the previous webinars I have given, that you're actually free to watch on YouTube. We'll link all the webinars on our website. So if there are some technical terms that are too technical for you, or if you want to have more in-depth information of how we do our prompting, for example, I also invite you to go to our website and check out the webinars. But today, I also have the intention to leave 10 minutes at the end of the webinar for question and answers. Also, what is important for me to say, all our webinars are not supposed to be sales pitches for the particular product that we are offering. Everything that I tell you here is like this or very similarly probably valid for all the other offers in the market, if there are any. There are not so many. But the principles that I explained to you here still hold for pretty much any service that will work with AI bots in the way we do. So I hope you will have fun, which is also important in AI, by the way. The best way to learn is always to play. That isn't only true for my little children. It will help you understand how you get your data into the bot and the bot onto your website. So without further ado, let's go. Many of you have been here before. Actually, many of you haven't been here before. A lot of people from Greece, which I find very good. Welcome. I am the founder of aStec, and I used to be a lawyer in a previous life and an art historian, and I love to lecture on AI. And we also do consultancy to libraries and archives in the case they discuss also internally, but also with their patrons and the boards on how to include AI. So we consult on that too. The AI bot that we are running was the first recommendation bot for public libraries in the world, I presume. I'm saying that since 2 years and nobody ever contradicted me. So, you know, in the strict scientific term of hypothesis, theory, and fact, I still claim that we're the first recommendation bot that has been out there. Today, we're going to focus on, as I said before, how to get data into your bot, what data you get into your bot, and how to put it on your website, especially in collaboration with library management systems like Koha or Axiell or other services that you use to manage your library. All right. So the first thing, what should be integrated? We're talking about metadata and front-end integration here. I'll briefly say something about prompts because they configure how the bot works. But these are the topics of this particular chat. Then I explain how these data come into the website and the database. So I'll have a very brief introduction into rack systems. So basically how a bot works that uses external data like your Mark 21 data or whatever you might want to feed the bot with. And then in the end, I will, I think, open a very different topic, which is the future, which is how to integrate AI chatbots with the classical search that you have all offered for a long time. If you check Google or Bing or any other search engine by now, you will see that you get an AI answer before actually the search results are listed. So I think this is a level of user experience that is created here now and a level of expectations with patrons and users that libraries will have to think of on how to match in their own services. I think the combination of AI and search is very quickly becoming industry standard. And I think or standard to access any kind of media or information. And libraries will have to think about how to match the expectations that users now have. I read a statistic this morning that actually the engagement rate with search results at Google dropped by 53%. So, and because most of the people are just happy with the answer the AI overview provides. And of course, that creates an experience that users might want to see in the library as well. Which of course is why we started the sport in the first place. So I threatened you with theory. Here I follow up on that. It's very brief. Most of you who have seen previous webinars will have seen that before. I made it a little bit nicer graphically, but the content is the same. So you have the conversation that is going on, and you have the metadata. On the bottom left, you have and some design mistakes here, sorry. So you have the institutions like public and academic libraries, archives, museums, and of course, we don't, or in most cases, at least, we don't receive the data of these institutions directly, but we receive them through third parties, the library management systems, ILS, BMS in German, consortia. For example, in Germany, we have a big library consortium in the federal state of North Rhine-Westphalia with all the university libraries, and they hold all their data. So we're integrated directly with this data consortium, but also from websites or content management systems. Of course, the best way is to always have a direct connection to the database, as I will explain later. The input formats, I'll come to that later. So it's Mark 21, HTML, PDF. I'll show you some examples. So the data that we receive from these institutions through these parties in these formats will all be turned into embeddings. Embeddings are numerical representations of this data. The important thing is they're not only numerical representations of the words, but also of the context of these words. So if there's a word dog in the data, this embedding will not only store dog, but it will store the whole context of the dog. So what the dog did. This dog was running through a fountain and making everybody wet. So this is then the meaning that this embedding will store, simplified. And this embedding, basically, it's a very large number representing all this data, lands in our, which is important for data protection purposes, which, by the way, if anybody's interested, we can make by now a large separate webinar on. So this data is stored in our vector database where it stays and where it's managed by our backend. So what happens? So this is how the data comes in. What happens if a user asks a question to the bot? The bot will also turn this data into an embedding, so also in a large number. This embedding will then be sent to our database where it will be compared with everything that is in this database. And the most similar results, this is why it's called similarity search, will then be going to this graphic a mistake here, which probably comes from the translation that I did on the German webinar. So here, these are the LLMs, so Claude, Mistral, Gemini. Mistral especially important for Europeans who have data protection concerns because they're a Paris-based company and follow European standards on data protection, but which also, by the way, might be interesting for non-Europeans. And out of the results of the similarity search, here the bot will construct the answer. The answer will then be modified and steered and controlled by the prompts. We'll come to that later too. And once the prompts have done their work, it will be given to the bot, and the bot will give the answer to the user. And this circle, user bot sending user questions to the vector database, similarity search, results of the similarity search to the LLM providing the results to the prompts modifying them accordingly, sending them back to the bot. This circle is done every time you ask an AI anything. So this is how AI works in a RAG environment, which means when you feed it your data and when it's not only running on its own training data. So that's enough for the theory of today. We will focus on two things. We'll focus on how these things come into the vector, what is coming how into the vector database, and how then gets the bot into your OPAC, into your website, wherever. All right, this is the scope. Data integration. Let's start with that. By the way, of course, all these images are AI generated. So, and this actually is a data integration in aStec style. So this is what Claude comes up if you prompt that. All right, so what is going to be integrated? So what can you put in? So you can put HTML pages in. So you can scrape websites. In earlier webinars, I said it's a bad idea. I still think it's a bad idea, but if you want to provide current data in the first go, let's say, to the bot, it might make sense to scrape a website, get all the data off the website, and then copy paste it into the bot. And then, very important, control it thoroughly and update it if updates are needed. So automatic input of HTML pages of websites is not advised. It's possible, but not advised because there will always be mistakes. But as a first step, it might be interesting. I'll show you an example. Actually, all these that are in bold, I'm going to show you. Prompts, very easy way to get information into a bot. Dublin Core for museums, for example, but of course also PDFs and whole text documents or collections of text documents. And of course, Mark 21 data. I cannot really show you that because Mark 21 data will be turned into snippets. The snippets I will show you that actually come from the Mark 21 data. So this is what we can put into the bot, into a text bot. There are, of course, a number of more options, but these are the options that we actually have experience with. The one thing here to remark is the way it usually works is that when we set up a bot, when anybody sets up a bot, you have a first big initial import where the whole collection is turned into these embeddings that I've talked about. And this initial import, depending on the size of the library collection in Berlin, for example, it's 4.5 million records. It's of course costly. I mean, it's a couple of €100, so it's not the world, and you will not. But it's still something that you don't want to do every other day. So it's important to be careful of which model to choose to create your embeddings because you shouldn't do that often. Once it's inside, actually, the only thing that happens to the set of data is updates. So deletion and updates. Then, of course, you're a bit more free because it's not that much data. It's also important to know under data protection perspectives, because actually what you can do is you create your embeddings locally. For example, if you have access to a data center or on a computer with a local model, not only save costs, but then you don't have to put all your data into some LLM AI offer somewhere across the Atlantic or anywhere. Um, and then actually the conversations that you will have with the data, only the conversational data will be exchanged with the LLM, which is actually pretty much the same as when you start a search and using another service for your search. So you can make a differentiation from a data protection point of view between embedding creation and conversations. Just a remark, as I said, there are many ways of making sure that, for example, the EU AI Act or data protection rules are held. But this, for example, is an interesting differentiation between embedding creation and conversation. So we have established which data comes into the bot. Now we have to briefly show you or talk about how the information gets into the bot. I'll show you an example of just writing prompt into the backend. But that's of course not very elegant. Still show you that, but that's not that's only valid for, let's say, service information like opening hours or where the cafeteria is. But of course, if you have larger amounts of data, be it Mark 21, be it text files, the best way is to have a direct API. So which actually runs to wherever the data is held. And this is, by the way, where usually Koha comes into play, or Axiell, who we have an integration with, or aStec, or whatever the names are. Thank God we have what's almost an industry standard ORE-PMH, which we support, which provides us a protocol that allows us to retrieve the data. Because of course, in the beginning, you import all the data, but what you want is the data to you want achieve if you follow is updated. Therefore, you need an API, some kind of connection that ensures the flow of the data between all the people. So the next thing is SFTP transfer. If you don't have an API, or if the library management system doesn't have an API, you need SFTP transfer. One other option is SFTP transfer. So basically, for the Berlin libraries, for example, we have an SFTP server, and once a day, a new set of files is uploaded to the server where we actually import the data from, and then we know which files have been deleted and which have been added. But then we actually, when our libraries ask how do we get our data to you, we basically say whatever you want. Of course, you can do script-driven imports, or you can have set up an automation that is very custom to the particular system. It makes sense if you have a library management system that serves a lot of libraries, because then you do it just once and with no extra cost, and then it works. That's the beauty of interfaces. But once you set it up, and if nothing is changed, then you can run that for a long time. So let me show you how these different options in terms of interfaces and data formats work. For this, I share my browser, which is here. So this, by the way, is our bot. It's Dortmund. It's a German city. It doesn't matter. By the way, this is where we scraped HTML from a website. So all this, by the way, was done by Claude AI. I asked Claude AI, can you scrape pretty much? It's a bit more complicated, but not much. Scrape the website of this, scrape the data of this website. And then I get a text data out, and the text data then allows me to set up our bot. So we integrated our bot in this website that Claude built for us. By the way, I'm going to show live how you can do that. And then actually I can ask, I don't know, where do I get my passport, which in Germany, and then this assistant answers and refers us to the website. By the way, if you see this bot thinking, 90% of the time of the bot thinking is done by the model, and 10% is the similarity search, for example, the detection of language if it's created, and stuff like that. So we have, by the way, in the end, in the back end, we have a statistics, how much time is spent on which process, so you can see how efficient the models are. So this is what the model then came up with. It answered me my question. I'm sorry, it answered in German, but that was the HTML website that we imported, but it told me where actually I get the passport and forwarded me to the website on that page. This is now a library. I specifically like this kind of library because they created this beautiful little owl here, Philo, its name. And they basically, what they do is they didn't do the recommendation engine. This is just a service bot. So you can ask, when is the library open? And then the bots gives me the please note, by the way, that the welcome is in German, but in the moment I ask in English, it answers me in English. So language is one of the big advantages of bots. So this bot doesn't talk about books. It only talks about service information. How this is done, I'll show you, because it's German. Now I show you in English backend. So this is the University of Nairobi in Kenya, and so we have two prompt sets, and one prompt set that we manage, which is here. These are prompt templates, and with the prompt templates, we use all our experience of 2 years of running a bot and of feedback that we give by the libraries to steer all the bots that we have. We have different prompt templates for service bots and for recommendation bots and for document bots. But this is kind of our general bot set. But the data that is now specifically for Nairobi is here. And what they do is, when asked which VPN should students install when on the campus, then answer Cisco AnyConnect. And this is how you prompt your data in the when-then format. So when asked which method does Uzo use to classify library books, then answer library classification scheme. So there's a 4,000 capital limit for words here, no capitals, and so this is only actually suited for a limited amount of data, and the smartest way is actually like they did here. To say go to this link, especially if it's data that is constantly updated, because then you don't have to update the bot. Then you can say, if asked for opening hours, follow this link. But for very simple, very quick service bot information, prompting the information in the when-then format is probably the quickest way to get a service bot running. So this is the if you remember the things I showed you HTML. So this is the prompt way. Next is the document way. So you can upload documents into the bot when you have, for example, when you want, as a university, you want to have all your information on how to use the university. All the description of the semester. So all this information you can just put on a server, and we import these files. And as any other bot will do, these files will be then turned into so-called snippets. The background is that if you have a text file or a book, for example, it's way too big in terms of data to be processed by the AI and turned into these embeddings, because of course also these embeddings, these numbers, have a limited capacity of storing context. So what is happening is that the data is chunked into little bits, and what you here see on the left is one such chunk. And this text here that I marked blue from here to there is then actually turned into this embedding that I talked about. What happened here is So we have 212,898 snippets that we created as a result of a digitization of the newspaper of Hanau, which is close to Frankfurt. If you can see here the date, this is a page from the newspaper from 1820, so from pretty much 206 years ago. So they digitized everything from 1804 to 1941. And now you can talk with these newspapers that they digitized. One little remark. So all the data that we use comes straight from digitization. Actually, this looks quite okay. Oh, this looks okay. So this is also something that comes from digitization. Funnily enough, and to our own surprise, the bot still manages, it looks, yeah, it's numbers. So it's, as you can easily see, it's not German, it's just numbers. And they don't make much sense to nobody, but, an automatic digitization process. The interesting thing is that the bot still is able to create a lot of sense out of these documents. But of course, this is great. And if you have, it's a copyright thing, but of course, if you have the copyrights to any kind of material, this is the way to do it. You chunk it up, you create embeddings, you store it in an embedding database, and then you can talk with these documents. So that is that. Now we had HTML, we had prompts, we had documents, and the same process, by the way, of course, also applies to Mark 21 data. And Mark 21 data, initially, we took the Mark 21 data, which is structured data, and translated it to natural language. It's not rocket science. Basically, it says if a field says a thriller, then natural language means the genre of this book is a thriller. Because, as you know, artificial intelligence is not an algorithmic precision thing, but a language probability machine, and as such works better with natural language than with structured data, for example. All right. This is the bot, by the way, of Montevideo, of the Universidad Católica de Montevideo, but I'll come later to that when we're approaching the topic of front-end integration. All right, let's go to, I think, did I talk about everything? Let me quickly check. Yeah, integration or EPMH, I mentioned data consortium. Yeah, interesting, by the way, with data consortia is that if you have one service that hosts the data for many libraries, what we haven't done so far is to upgrade our database in a way that the database stores all the data and then just makes a differentiation between the different libraries in that consortium. At the moment, we just actually import for every consortium member all the data. But that's one of the projects that we're still working on. So there's still a lot of work to do. Detronic is a library management system. We create a custom API there. I think I mentioned that. All right. So this is data. As I said, if you have more questions on that, feel free to post them in the chat. I hope I didn't check because I'm talking so much, but I hope that Chris is already there and answering the questions if you have any. All right. So how do we get the bot that now holds all your data, be it in prompts, be it in HTML, be it in Mark 21 or documents, into your front end, so into your OPAC, into your website? This is what we're going to talk about now. All right. So it's actually a process that is quite simple. When I originally drafted this presentation, of course, I showed it the developers for double check, and I had there it takes 2 hours to ingest the bot into a website, and they said, well, if you take more than 2 minutes, you don't really know what you're doing. So I learned what I'm supposed to do, and I'll show you in a minute. So what happens is that you get a code block, which I'll show you. And this is like 10 lines of code, and you insert them into wherever it's needed to be inserted, for example, in the HTML of your website. And then actually you can configure the bot according to your style and your taste. And then you have to, of course, define how big it is, what colors it has. So, for example, these are different protagonists of our bot world. So Kai, for example, is the Cologne University bot. Feb is the bot of all the Berlin libraries. Philo, you have just seen. Query, very nice bot of the children's library in Taunusstein, which is a very little town in Germany. Interesting also that you not only define the name and the face of your protagonist, but also how it behaves. So, for example, the FEP doesn't want to use emojis because it's serious. Query, for example, which is primarily targeted at children, definitely uses emojis. And also, I don't know, do I have it open? Let me show you briefly, because I think that's also, no, that's my presentation. So for example, here, if you see the Montevideo, if you open this, it opens over the whole page. And of course, it greets you in Spanish. This is obvious. If you go to the Cologne bot, which is here, the Kai, it looks completely different. And also it has a feedback form, custom feedback form. This is not on our service. They introduced it so that if there are any users here, they can use this feedback. So this is, or you can also have the full screen. This is how they configured it. That maybe, and yeah, in Taunusstein, for example, in a children's library, which I don't have open, actually, don't want to search it now. But for example, you don't only get text as answer, but you get the cover images of the books as answer. So if you ask for Batman, you'll get the cover of a Batman comic inside the answer, because we have access to a server with all the cover images of books published in Germany. So these are all configurations that you can then make when you integrate the bot using your protagonists. All right, so let's get started. I'll just briefly show you how I do that. For that, I have to go to my desktop. All right. Sorry, that may take a second. So this is here how it works. So I have this web page here. This was created by, I use Claude and ChatGPT and Gemini in parallel because they actually have different strengths. So I think this was created by Claude. It's just a simple this is what AI imagines a beautiful library web page to look. So it's completely dummy web page, but of course for our purposes, it has an HTML code. So the website that you have just seen looks in HTML just like that. So this is the code of what you have just seen, and then I take. And this is the code, just this, that you need. Oh, let me go back to this. So what you don't see here on the bottom right is the bot. So what I do now is I take this code, which, by the way, the information that you need to provide to the bot is only the bot ID, which is this one, and the token, which is this one, which we create for every bot. And the rest is the standard. So now we take this code and we put it into this website. Where is it? I left some space. Here's some space. Copy, paste. Now oops, I didn't want to do that. I do this. Speichern. And now I pray, because it should work now. And if it doesn't, I don't know what to do. But as I said, consider me a librarian who has very little clue and ask people before doing something. They explained it to me up, and here is the bot. And it's fully functional, by the way, because it works it enters, it connects with our bot server and starts working. So, and this is live, so I can do whatever. Okay, so this is how to. So I don't know. I didn't time it, but I guess it was even less than 2 minutes. This is the way how to get a bot into your website. Please note that the interesting part is also in terms of data protection. This all works, the access to the bot and also the answers that the bot provides without any personal data. So we don't even store the URL. So we only know the conversations, and actually you can configure how long we store these confirmations, the chat history, the conversations. And so there's in European data protection terms no way really to individualize the chat to a particular user. All right, so the last thing is it's not strictly integration. So we discussed metadata integration, we discussed integration into frontend, and I showed you a little bit. But still, I wanted to lose one word on prompting, because of course prompting is the way you configure your bot. As I said, show the answer in the language that the user prompts with you. So if as I greet in German and I answer in Arabic, so the bot is supposed to answer in Arabic, which by the way it does. If you and so prompting kind of is part of as is styling in CSS is part of making the bot your own. That it appears to be your own service and not somebody else's. So in this sense, prompting also is necessary to integrate the bot. But fear not, noble librarian, prompting is not so difficult. As you have seen in the example of Nairobi, it's just a natural language commands that in most cases do the job. So just write what you want. I just invite you to control and test what the prompt that you have written does with the behavior of the bot. But you cannot destroy anything. You can just test what it does and see if it's successful. And if not, either try something else or ask us. Usually we have an answer. We don't always have the answer that solves the problem, because some of these problems cannot be solved because they're, for example, inherent in the AI technology. But most of the time you can solve any problem by prompting. Also, you destroy anything because we have, as I showed you, 2 levels of prompts. So we have the master prompts, which are managed by us, which make sure that the bot always works. And then you have your bots as a layer on top of that, where you can configure the bot in the way you want it to behave. And by the way, and this plays into one of the points that will now follow. Let me quote Picasso, who I hope I'm quoting from memory, but I think he said, "Bad artists copy, great artists steal." So consider yourself a great artist. Just go to the bots that the others have created and copy paste their prompts to your bot and adapt them according to your needs. By the way, all the librarians who spent a lot of time prompting, mostly not of necessity but of fun, are very much willing to share their prompts. And I'll give you an example in the last section of this webinar, the future. So there are 2 things I want to mention here. The first comes straight from where I have just shown you. So we are actually quite fond of open source. So we and the Berlin libraries shared their prompts. So you can go here on GitHub. It's public domain. It is part of this presentation. So actually we'll send the presentation around later. And you can just see how Berlin prompts its bot. It's in German, natural language, by the way. Just don't be confused by all this headlines here. It's actually debatable whether they're necessary. They're supposed to make the prompts more effective. And the newer models, I don't actually think it's necessary. So you can just translate the text into English or Greek or any other language that you want to. And then you can start with the prompts that the Berliners use for their library. Actually, all the others, also Taunusstein and probably the Cologne people, share their prompts, because what we are in the process of developing is a tool. And now I'm searching it. This is this, where we put all the prompts that we have for the different aspects of the bot in. So for example, tone and behavior. We have informal pronouns, which is very German, by the way. But of course, there's also policies involved, or style no emojis, very easy, but never use emojis. So if you have ideas on emojis, you can just copy the code here or the prompt here and put it in your prompt window, and you have your answer for emojis. Truthfulness and safety, user interaction, conversation memory, for example. Also important. Reference previous recommendations and user preference throughout the conversation, so that that particular prompt makes sure that the prompt considers the whole conversation when providing an answer, and not just generates a new answer and forgets about the rest of the conversation as it already happens. So you have here the different topics. You can see, and these are prompts actually not only by Berlin or by us, but also by other libraries that we put in here. And so this is a prompt. It's not online because we're testing it, but this is kind of a prompt management tool that I think when done can be very helpful for you in adapting to whatever issue you might have with the bot. So this is fantastic, and of course I hope we have here also downloads. This is our, for example, this is our backend user handbook. And you have a wall where you can put your questions on. And so our intent is to have a community of librarians and users who share their experience with the bot. So actually we have less work. No, and of course we have the common knowledge with everybody, and nobody has to be afraid that they're alone in the open and cold waters of AI. So that is the first future thing, that we can kind of create a knowledge base for AI interactions. The second one is search chat. I'll show you a prototype that we have built based on a law library before. Let me just go back to this here. And so I can ask anything like, so actually this is a prototype, but I think it serves well to show you where we think the voyage, the travel for libraries and for any actually media collections, be it archives, museums, libraries, or anybody who provides access to a huge collection of data is going to. Of course, it's not something we invented because we're so original. We're just following the examples of learned behavior, and I'll show you how it works. So, do you have literature? So it's a law library. What concerns us on human rights research? And you have, interestingly enough, a Polish answer here. Maybe we say on labor law. And we have an English answer. So the language switch doesn't yet perfectly, but it's a prototype. It also serves only to show you what we think the future is. And this is pretty much a repurposed concept that we're Picassos too. We stole from Google and from Bing and from all the other search engines, that you have here an AI answer to a question. Do you have literature on labor law? And this is, by the way, generated by our bot. So this is actually live from a bot that we created for this law library. What you then can do is either you continue the chat, then the chat window's open and you ask the chat follow-up questions, or when the AI answer already provided good results, you can jump directly from the AI answer to the search result in the search list. So we have for this, labor law, very popular in Germany. So we have 3,308 results. These are real results, by the way. So I can load them all. But of course, I can also sort them by relevance, by A to Z. No title is A, this is before A. Let's do Z to A. So it's A to Z, author A to Z, okay. Let's do year descending to see how the filter works. 2026. So we have very new data. We can have the details on this, which is actually who bought this book in this case. And you have some keywords, which are, by the way, generated by AI. So this is not part of the library. And of course, you have your filters. You have the location of the books here down here. And so actually you have a whole integration of an AI generated answer that you can continue to chat with, and the classical search results. And that, I think, marries both worlds. The worlds of conversational AI that allows you to be inspired, to also research topics that you're not so familiar with, so you can actually approach the topic, or a known item search that will then yield the results here in the search. So this is actually what I think the future of AI and search look like. That is that. Now I'm returning to my presentation. By the way, this is another test that we didn't do. This is a test by the Berlin libraries. This is viewfind integration. So the idea of and this is of course our chatbot, and this is viewfind, and they kind of put it next to each other. So these are tests and trials that we do. And I think, to be honest, that this is the future. And this is also what is being expected. This is, I think, the replication of how modern discovery systems will work. Actually, as I said, we're exploring, we're defining the requirements. I'm very happy to collaborate on that. We're very open to how we to share our knowledge and our experience. Whoever is interested on working on this, on testing on this, on working on a prototype, feel free to contact us. We are very, let's say, highly motivated to find a great solution for that. So 13 minutes to 5. I've never been this quick. Well, that's a lie. Yesterday I've been like 2 minutes quicker. Don't forget the survey at the end, but now actually I'm opening the chat, and I am trying to find chat answers that have not been working, that have been asked. Sorry, maybe I missed it, but what is the base model of the bots you showed us? Do you offer libraries a choice of the base model? What are the arguments for the choice? I start at the end. So the base models that we have integrated are Gemini, Mistral, and OpenAI. And we didn't yet, because there wasn't a requirement for that, introduce Claude. It's something I would like to do. Between ChatGPT, OpenAI, and Gemini, it's a bit a question of taste. We think that ChatGPT is better. Mistral is the choice if data protection is very important for you, because it's a model, or at least a company based in Europe. And if you compare the data protection statements on the websites, the one of Mistral actually shows that, let's say, they put more effort in data protection at least half a year ago. I don't know what the current status is, and it changes fast, than the American counterparts. So basically, ChatGPT and Gemini, whatever works better for you. Mistral when you want data protection. And then, of course, second thing is inside a model family. The choice is between cost and latency and quality of the answer. So of course the better, let's say, the better the models the providers claim the model is, the more expensive it is. But be careful, the thinking models for the purposes, for example, of a recommendation bot or service bot are not the best choice, because they take a long time to think. And especially if you want to know the opening hours, you don't want to wait for an hour to receive an answer. And also for our purposes, which is recommendation for the majority of our partners, a smaller model like ChatGPT 4.1 is just enough. because we don't write code, we don't create press releases, at least not for the clients I've just shown you here. So for these purposes, currently the best performing model in terms of speed, answer quality, and cost is ChatGPT 4.1. But of course, this needs to be constantly monitored to update these decisions. Actually, could you show examples of successful replies by the bots? Of course. By the way, all the bots that you have just seen are listed on our webpage, so you can actually check yourself. But let me just, actually, I can show you how to best check yourself. Let's do this. Let's go to about something.org. So this is our webpage. And then you have partners here, and let's go to the first one. So this is FEP. This is the bot of the Berlin libraries. Here is the bot on the website of the Berlin libraries. And I would like to have a book on, let's say, a guy that I really admire, Alexander von Humboldt. And so you have here a list, the answers. So thinking. And here's a list of books. By the way, the number of books, of course, is configurable. And then actually the way the bot is integrated is you click on the books provided by the bot. And let's just let him finish the answer. So, and then you click on the book, and now you land in the OPAC where you can borrow the book. So this is the way this is integrated. If you want to have another installation, let's go to, actually this is, so Berlin uses ChatGPT 4.1. So this was it, no, 4.1 mini. So this was a 4.1 mini answer. Now we can go to Philo I just showed you. This is the way I showed you the opening hours. I think this is, let me go to Query, by the way, a name that I really, really like. Oops. Taunusstein Library. Taunusstein Katalog. Here is Query. And then I want to do a new conversation. And Query only talks German because it's intended for children. So can you show? No. Let's see. I want Batman. So, and here Query is not sure what it wants. Do I want comics? Do I want books? Or do I want films? Actually, Query is prompted in a way that it asks specs if it's a taste thing. So, for example, the Cologne people of the University of Cologne said, provide your best answer in the first go. Query is prompted in a way that asks back to be sure that the answer fits. So I want a comic, and I am, as you can easily see, 12 years old. And let's see what happens. So, I mean, even though it speaks German, by the way, because it's for children, it is answering, so it understands me, but is answering in German still, even if I speak English. So this is what I said in the beginning. So here's actually a Batman comic. Mein erster Comic gegen Batman, and as a Joker. So these are two different installations of a Batman comic. So I hope I answered that question. We use a flat data model to handle the data. What is, okay, Christian answered that already. Yeah. So sorry I missed this, but this I answered. Full embed the record, this was answered. I hope just be interested in exploring. This is interesting to know. So I copy the link. Okay, open source. Let me say something about open source chatbots. So we're great friends of open source. So as you have seen, we're even sharing the prompts that we use to steer them to manage the bot. The problem is, so we have been around in the bot world for 2.5 years now, and I've seen numerous open source projects going down the drain, or at least losing support. So the first thing with open source project is how do we make sure that they're maintained, especially in an environment where models develop this quickly and where the landscape is not yet firm. So the ground on which we stand is not firm. So you don't want to invest time and effort into something that will not be here like in half a year or so. That's the first thing. The second thing about open source models is copyright. So you don't want one of the reasons to use commercial models like Mistral, OpenAI, or Google is that they have the copyright under control. What you don't want is to have copyrighted information in the bot and then a screenshot of a patron shared on social media with something that is protected. And with open source models, you're responsible for that, and you cannot just pass on the responsibility. So this is one thing. And then the last thing is in terms of cost. First of all, of course, the cost of maintenance and updating is on your hand, as you know. But I think the cost is only then, let's say, reduced in certain environments if you host the model yourselves on premise, because then, of course, you can you can use, for example, the computers that you already have or that are provided by a local or as in Berlin, we're assessing that now in Berlin that we do the embedding processing locally with the actually the data center of the city of Berlin. And then actually processing doesn't cost. But even in open source models, if you do embedding generation or if you do, there's processing power involved and somebody has to pay the bill for the computers. So I'm not so sure how in the long run open source models will finance that part of the cost. So as much as I like the idea, I think in AI, not that it's impossible, but it's a little bit too early until the standard technologies have settled and license models for copyrighted information have been are in place. So that's my stance on open source. But again, we're in it as soon as we see how we can work with it. All right. Are there any more questions? 2 more minutes to go if you have any questions. All right. Good. So if there are not any more questions, I thank you for your time. Please help us doing the next webinar by answering the questions that will pop. Oh, there is a question. Thank you. Not a question, but thank you too. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time. And as I said, if you want collaboration, interests, just write us, talk to us. Bye-bye.